Okay, sorry. Please join me in welcoming our two guests. Today we have Maya El Khalil, who is a visual arts advisor at Abu Dhabi Music and Art Foundation, and she's also the co-curator of both the exhibition that took place in Abu Dhabi last year, Layered Medium, We Are in Open Circuits, and of course this exhibition. And of course Eunju Kim, who is the co-curator of Proximities and also one of the curators here at the Seoul Museum of Art. Please join me in welcoming. We couldn't be joined today by, hang on, I have to say it, Kyung Hwan Yo, who is the other curator. Unfortunately, she couldn't join us today, but she was working with Maya on the exhibition in Abu Dhabi, Layered Medium, and she's also a curator here at the Seoul Museum of Art. So we miss her, and she's here in spirit. Okay. So this exhibition is called Proximities. It's a word which usually suggests closeness, but here we are being asked to think about proximity in a slightly different way. It's not only about things being near to one another, but also what happens when different people, ideas, and worlds come into contact. The works in this exhibition consider how identities, environments, and ways of seeing the world are informed and mediated by movement, encounter, and change. This exhibition, as I mentioned, is the second exhibition in a multi-year collaboration between the Seoul Museum of Art and the Abu Dhabi Music and Art Foundation. And today, the exhibition is coming to a close this weekend, but we are celebrating the launch of the two publications which have emerged from the two exhibitions. And that's what how we'll be starting our discussion today. So Maya, I would like to start with you to talk about the work. Your essay, which is in Layered Medium, starts by talking about It starts by talking about the resonances, the way when you moved the work first from Seoul to Abu Dhabi, and then obviously now the Emirati works have come from Abu Dhabi and they're here in Seoul, how that very active movement changes the resonance of the artworks themselves. So I wonder if you could start the discussion by using that as an entry point to talk about the publications and how they also attempt to bring these resonances into how they reflect those resonances. Sorry, I'm getting confused with my language. Yeah, tell me.
First of all, thank you so much for having us and for hosting us today, and really to open up conversations along topics that have been addressed in both exhibitions. But there have been, talking about context, is that how, for instance, having an exhibition of Korean artists in a context that is not familiar with the artist, that is not familiar with the Korean history, that is probably not familiar, that's not also familiar with the works, how are these works read? And so the attempt was not, for instance, to really take an art scene and place it in another context. And we didn't also take the art scene in the Gulf and place it here. It was more about how, when we encounter each other, we encounter ideas, how we change. What's the process of transformation that takes place? So, it wasn't. So the attempt here was not about resolving complexities or simplifying or translating. It was more about presenting.
And perhaps also the complexities, the original complexities that the artworks were made to address in, sometimes 30 years ago, also take on new resonance or new relevance, rather, not resonance, in a new context.
Absolutely. I mean, they take new. The meaning is, in a way, it transforms not only as meaning, as themes, but also the viewer is transformed by this experience. So it's this constant, it's the idea of we are not static. And we exist in a world. The work in the first exhibition, Layered Medium or in Open Circuits, was inspired as an anchor point by the thinking of Namjoon Paik's, when he of this idea of where we exist in a global networked world where actually, in a way, art would create more connections, will create that super highway of networks, and will bring us closer to each other. So having that discussion and grounding it in these topics, there is resonance. I mean, in knowing about, in being more connected, maybe there is some meaning that we derive, that we feel that we're familiar with. But this is also, in terms of familiarity, we can discuss it, where it can also be a risk.
Yeah, I mean, I think to bring it back to the publication, so you mentioned that nothing is static. And obviously the exhibition in Abu Dhabi, I know probably most of you didn't see that, but it was really amazing to bring the work of these Korean, you know, I was going to say classic artists, but, you know, legendary in some respects artists to Abu Dhabi. And you mentioned just now that, you know, everything is moving, everything is always taking on new context. Obviously, we have a publication which is, in some ways, it is a static art form. We are documenting the exhibitions, and we are putting a line in the sand to say, this at this point in time, this is how we responded to these works. I do want to bring in the second publication as well, and obviously Eunju offer that too, but let's talk about the way the publication is structured, the second one particularly. It's sort of structured also around this idea of proximities, of how we can experience the exhibitions. Do you want to talk a little bit about how the exhibition is structured? The publication itself is structured.
Okay. Well, the publication is definitely a documentation of the exhibition, but also it opens up by inviting writers and academics and thinkers from each context to respond to each exhibition. For instance, the exhibition in Abu Dhabi, we invited geologists, architects, thinkers whose practice is rooted in the context of the UAE. So they're not only based there, but their practice is rooted there to reflect and to respond to the themes that have been addressed in the exhibition. And each one was, obviously, the direction, we didn't really try to form a certain response, but for each one, we gave them to respond to a certain section of that exhibition. And interestingly enough, they went on a slant, so they did not address directly the works in the exhibition or the artists or the history, but they actually looked at it from the context of the UAE and what it meant. So expanding concepts of society as medium, the body as medium, the concept also as space, how space is net neutral, and what does it mean? What's the meaning of infrastructure, and how does it shape our being, and and how does it change us? And in parallel, here, when we had Proximities, we also invited thinkers and writers to reflect on the topics that would interest. And that's very interesting, and actually I would love the opinion of Eunju on this, is that the reaction was different. Here, actually, the writers engaged directly with the themes of the exhibition and with the work and with the structure of the exhibition. So it was, and I was wondering why and what.
Let's ask Eunju. I mean, actually, I'd love for you to talk a bit about that, the invitation to the guest writers, especially from Seoul or from Korea, and were there any new perspectives raised? Or perhaps you can answer Maya's question. Why do you think they responded so differently?
우선 이 전시가 아부다비에서도 열렸고 서울에서도 열렸지만 이 두 전시를 준비하는 과정상의 맥락은 조금 달랐다고 생각합니다. 두 번째 전시의 경우는 조금 더 작품에 집중하고 또 특히나 이 전시를 대하는 그 한국의 관객들이 UAE에 대해서 거의 많은 정보를 이렇게 말하면 좀 그렇지만 거의 없다시피 한다는 생각이 많이 들었어요. 점점 저도 공부하면 공부할수록 제가 이 UAE라는 사회를 그리고 아랍 사회라는 곳을 잘 모르고 있었던 부분이 훨씬 더 많았구나라는 생각이 들었기 때문에 그런 것을 전제해서 봤을 때 이 사람들이 그렇다면 이 전시를 어떻게 바라보게 할 것인가, 그리고 이 전시가 가지고 있는 작품의 맥락을 통해서 한국 관객들이 어떻게 UAE 사회를 바라보게 할 것인가라는 것이 굉장히 중요한 지점이었고, 그렇다면 이 작품이 다루어내는 사회성이나 어떤 사회가 가지고 있는 이슈를 충분히 다루어줘야 할 필요가 있겠다. 그것을 기반으로 해서 이 사회를 인식하게 하고 또 이해하게 하고 또 그것을 기반으로 조금 더 나아간 그 맥락을 이해시킬 수 있겠다라는 생각이 들었기 때문에 필자들이 아부다비 전시의 도록과는 달리 조금 더 작품에 집중해서 뭔가 더 다른 관점을 제시했지만 그것이 첫 번째 스텝이 될 수밖에 없구나라는 생각이 그 전시 준비하는 과정에서 있었고요. 두 번째는 이 전시가 아무래도 시각 예술을 기반으로 한 전시이다 보니까 시각 예술이 어떻게 그 사회성을 다루고 있는가라는 그 표현이 굉장히 다른 방식으로 나뉘어진다고 생각했습니다. 왜냐하면 저희가 이 전시에서 48명의 작가를 소개하고 있고 또 100여 점이 넘는 작품을 소개하고 있는데 이 작가들이 다루어내는 어떤 그 시각과 그 작품이 그 차용하고 있는 예술적인 언어가 굉장히 다르거든요. 그래서 이 예술적인 언어를 이 필자의 시선으로는 어떻게 해석할 수 있는가, 그리고 그 해석하는 지점들을 통해서 그들이 펼쳐지는 이 논지가 또 어떻게 한국의 맥락과 맞닿아 있는가에 대해서 이야기하고자 했고, 그래서 저희가 이제 첫 번째 섹션은 젊은 작가들을 초대했기 때문에 젊은 작가들과 그렇게 많이 나이대가 떨어져 있지 않은 그 필자를 섭외해서 그 젊은 필자가 이 젊은 작가들을 바라보는 그 시선은 또 어떠한가도 궁금했었고요. 그리고 두 번째는 미술계에서 활동하고 계시지만 조금 더 사회적인 맥락에 맞닿아 있는 서동진 필자를 섭외해서 이 사회가 UAE 사회가 초기에 발전하면서 어떻게 사회상이 달라져 왔고 그 사회 상을 기반으로 이 미술계가 또 어떻게 달라져 왔는지에 대해서 조금 더 바라보고 싶었고, 그리고 세 번째는 그 권진 필자를 섭외해서 2019년도에 고향이라는 중동 전시를 준비하면서 공부하고 느꼈던 어떤 중동에 대한 부분을 이제는 현 시점에 와서 또 어떻게 달리 해석할 수 있는가에 대해서 바라보고 싶었기 때문에 이 세 명의 한국 필자를 섭외하게 되었습니다.
Thank you, Eunju, for explaining that. I think it was an important decision to look for the young voices as well as obviously people who were informed also about the Emirati art scene. And I think it's really interesting what Maya said, how the reaction from the writers and thinkers around the two different cities was so different, and that talks to one of the themes, if you like, of the exhibition itself. We talk a lot about similarities. Nam June Paik talked about a connected world, and this exhibition, Proximities, suggests a similarity. We live in a globalized world. We live in a world which is close. We can feel close, at least, to everywhere in the world. But of course, that doesn't mean that we become the same, which is a key point of the exhibition. So I wonder if you can just explain a little bit, Maya. You bring this up in your essay, actually, in Layered Dialogues, Proximities, and you talk about Virginia Woolf's The Waves. Maybe you could just explain a little bit to audiences about that metaphor.
Yes, I mean, in my essay, I was trying really to understand the tension that exists in proximity, the tension and what does it mean to be near. And I realized that, in a way, there is we are comfortable. There is a sense of comfort when you talk about proximities because we look at what is familiar. Right? When we move into a new space, we try a new place, we try and meet new people. We try to find what you understand. There is a tendency to maybe to resort to that familiarity, to that when meeting new people, and to resort to a sense of easiness. And there is inherent risk in that, because this is when, if we don't address a complexity that we don't understand, then there is a mode of simplification, a mode of easiness that settles. And I think this is a tension also in globalization. So in citing the work of Virginia Woolf, The Waves, it is a piece of literature that was written over almost 100 years ago. So the context and the word was different. But I think we were dealing with the same issues, with same realities that in a way we're dealing with today, which is a more networked world, a more globalization, war. And these are issues, and these are realities that we're dealing with today. So I think it was very relevant, but also the fact that it is very much a radical piece of literature. It's a radical way of narrating and approaching an understanding of the self. And actually, it is a foundational work. It's quite a complex text to read. But the interest is that what's interesting is that it took us through 6 different personalities from childhood up to old age. And by doing that, we realized that this self, as a definition of understanding of the self, kept being redefined, reconfigured. It's almost like these constellations that keep overlapping each other, influencing each other. And again, this idea that we change, we transform when we connect. And in a way, we thought about this exhibition in the same way. Proximities is built around ideas of subjectivities that overlap. And at no point did we decide that we're going to present a survey of the Gulf scene or the UAE art scene. That's not our ambition. We are presenting subjective positions of multiple artists. And, I mean, talking about structure, the fact that we invited artist curators to curate sections of this exhibition. And Eunju and myself, we work closely with these artist curators, but we also worked around the concept that they developed, and they invited peers, and we invited other concept and artwork to either reinforce or actually contradict the different positions. So there is, between the sections, there is always that almost like concentric circles that keep expanding, overlapping, and retreating.
Absolutely, and you can see that. In my eye line is the book, which actually has these 2 concentric circles on it. And every time I think about that metaphor that you wrote about, or think about the conceptual nature of the exhibition, I think of those 2. Maya just talked about, Eunju, the complexities in the exhibition and how actually you as a curatorial duo attempted to present those complexities, not resolve them, and not necessarily provide audiences direct entry points or answers for any complexities. So I wonder, could you expand a bit on the process of the collaboration and the curatorial vision that you and Maya had for this exhibition?
사실 두 큐레이터가 하나의 시선으로 이야기를 하기 위해서 전시를 만드는 것 자체가 쉬운 일은 아니었습니다. 어쨌든 서로 다른 문화적인 배경을 가지고 있고 또 그 문화적인 배경을 서로 알아가기 위한 시간도 필요했고 또 어떠한 그 근접성이라는 것에 대한 주제를 다루어내기 위한 그 어떤 서로의 문화적인 배경 이런 것들 굉장히 달랐기 때문에 이런 것들의 어떤 접점을 만들어내기가 쉬운 과정은 아니었는데 이런 것 자체가 이 전시의 아주 중요한 출발점이라고 생각했습니다. 굉장히 다른 시선을 가지고 있는 두 큐레이터가 하나의 전시를 만들어내기 위해서 시선을 모으는 것, 그리고 저희 둘의 어떤 그 시선 안에 갇히는 것이 아니라 조금 더 넓은 다양성을 보기 위해서 게스트 큐레이터를 초청하고 또 작가들과도 굉장히 긴밀하게 소통하면서 다양한 시각을 그야말로 모으는 것에 좀 집중했었던 것 같습니다. 그리고 그 다양한 시각이 어떻게 겹쳐져서 새로운 이야기를 만들어내는가가 저희가 계속해서 다뤄내고자 했던, 집중하고자 했었던 지점이 아닐까 싶습니다.
Actually, Eunju, I just want you to expand a little bit more. I'm really interested in how those ideas that you two both worked really hard to overcome, like you said, get to know each other, and I was going to say overcome your differences, but it's not about overcoming anything, just about presenting. I'd like to know what was the audience reaction like? This is almost at the end of a 3-month run. So what has been the reaction like from Korean audiences? They really understood, really engaged with that complexity.
제가 앞서서 말씀드린 것 같이 이제 한국 관객들이 특히나 제가 다수의 VIP 투어를 진행하면서 한국 관객들과 이제 면대면으로 직접 만날 수 있는 기회가 다수 있었는데 그때 느꼈던 것이 굉장히 호기심은 많지만 현재 한국에서 들려오는 여러 중동에 대한 많은 이슈들, 그리고 과거에도 한국 사람들이 가질 수밖에 없는 아주 한정적인 중동에 대한 정보들, 이러한 것들이 중동에 대한 어떤 이미지나 그 어떤 정보의 그 아주 기반이기 때문에 그것들을 이 전시에 투영해서 본다면 사실 한국 관객들은 전혀 이 다른 세계를 보는 것 같은 전시였을 다고 생각합니다. 특히나 이제 VIP 투어를 하다 보면은 제가 되게 캐주얼하게 관객들에게 묻기도 하면서 이 전시에 대한 이제 생각들을 좀 이끌어내는 이제 경험을 하는데, 예를 들어 제가 재밌었던 경험은 전시를 아마 다 보셨을 텐데 3번째 섹션에 제도권에 어떤 그 발맞춰서 예술가들이 작품을 만들어내는 그러한 이제 성향들의 작품을 많이 보실 수 있습니다. 근데 그 작품을 보고서 이제 한국 관객, 그리고 특히나 이제 저희 아버지 뻘 되시는 분이 저에게 물어오셨던 게 제도권과 발맞춰서 작품을 만들어낸다는 것이 이 사회에는 부정적이지 않나 보네요 라고 말했던 게 저로서는 굉장히 재밌었습니다. 왜냐하면 어쨌든 많이 기억하실 테지만 한국에서는 6, 80년대에 군부 독재 시절이 있었고 그 시대에 발맞춰서 뭔가를 만들어냈던 그 제도권과 아주 적극적으로 협업했던 작가들이 이 시대의 현대미술에서 그렇게 좋은 인상으로 남아있지 않는데 그러한 관점을 많이 기억하고 있는 중장년층의 남성분들은 이 제도권과 발맞춰서 뭔가를 만들어내고 있는 유해의 젊은 작가들, 특히나 젊은 작가들에 대해서 굉장히 궁금한 시선으로 저한테 물어보셨습니다. 그래서 저는 이제 아마도 그것은 사회적인 배경 자체가 다르기 때문이 아닌가라고 대답을 들었는데, 제가 이해하기로는 어쨌든 UAE가 국민 친화적으로 아주 좋은 리더십을 보여주고 있고 또 그 리더십의 방향성을 표명할 수 있는 어떤 것들을 예술가들이 만드는 것에 기꺼이 동참하고 있고, 그것이 어떤 국가의 뭐 발전 동력이라고 할 수 있다면 저는 그것이 국가가 만들어내는 아주 긍정적인 결과라고 생각합니다라고 대답을 했는데, 그것이 굉장히 좀 이 한국 사회의 특정 사람들, 그리고 어떤 그 경험을 가지고 있는 사람들이 UAE를 바라보는 아주 다양한 시선을 갖고 있다면 그것도 일종의 다양한 시선이 아니었나 생각이 듭니다. 아마 마야가 당연히 이 지점에 대해서 이야기를 얹고 싶어 할 겁니다.
No, actually, I want to give a little bit more background because I mean, what are these sections within the exhibition, and why did we think about them this way? And actually, I'll go back then how these two different publications have been structured, because they're structured differently. And so in the first exhibition, it was a direct curation. So it was co-curated by Kyung-won and myself, and presented, there was a certain chronology at the beginning, presenting a history of of 50 years of Korean artists working with media, and the idea of media as substance, not as substrate or tools, but more as a mediation, the concept of mediation. Okay, and then starting with the chronology to understand, to introduce the 60s and the 70s, these pioneering years, and then moving through the exhibition from actually in a way that's parallel this exhibition, because from the most intimate, the body as a medium, to society as how it shapes with marginalized stories, social structures, and then to space as spaces of whether urbanization, the infrastructure as also space. So that in a way, it's a more straightforward curation. Coming here, actually, in a way, it was a bit more complex because it had the perspective of these three artists and collectives that we invited, and I need to actually give them names. So it is Farah Al-Qasimi, who actually curated the first section of this exhibition, and to reiterate the conversation that we had, Eunju and myself, now that we have these themes, the first one talking about the domestic space, the interior, the privacy of home, and the idea of fabulation. And we titled that section "A Place for Turning," because in Arabic, the meaning of heart is, the etymology of the word is qalb, and qalb means to turn. And heart is the place where, whether it's home or whether it's the intimate spaces, it's where we have time or we have a space to feel safe, supposedly. And when you have that time and that place, you can process things and you can transform. So you need that time, you need that safe space to be able to process what's happening outside. And homes are more and more today that are infiltrated, that porous, with technology, with the interface, digital interface. So the world is coming in, and the intimacy of the inside, the inside is also seeping out. So fabulation, and you see the first section uses extremely these ideas of the eerie, of fabulation, not as a way to escape, but as a way to survive and to transform and to make sense. So why I'm giving all of this explanation, because to say that, I'm giving all of this explanation to say that we decided that to introduce a scene, and again, it's not a survey, it's multiple position, but to introduce it to a public in Korea who has no prior knowledge, or predominantly, we believe that there is enough knowledge about the UAE or the UAE art scene. A good way to start is home. A good way to start is the intimate.
I think it's a very important way to start too. As Eunju so rightly mentioned, many audiences here in Seoul only see the UAE or the Gulf region through the news, which, as we know at this moment, is especially complex, to use that word again. And I think starting with the home and Farah Al-Qasimi's co-curated section is really interesting, because it's not what you expect. It's kind of bold and bright. There are lots of colors. You have these really intimate photographs of Farah herself, which are always surprising. You have a goat on a sofa, or a lady in a bright purple hijab on the computer. So there's a lot of elements of the home which are maybe surprising. And I think it is important for us now at this point in the discussion to take audiences a little bit through the exhibition, because obviously we do want to give you a little bit of a deeper understanding. Eunju, you mentioned the third section. I think we should first move to the second section, though, after the first section. So we move from this place of home, a safe place where we perhaps process or make sense of the world, and also fabulate. And we move from the pink sand and the pink walls upstairs into the section called Recording Distance, Not Topography, Maybe you can explain a bit more about that section for our audiences as well.
마야가 첫 번째 섹션에 대해서 이야기하면서 어떤 집이라는 것, 그리고 내가 바깥 세상과 단절되어 있는, 혹은 바깥 세상과 어떤 방면에서는 또 연결되어 있는, 왜냐하면 저희가 바깥 세상에서 생활하다가 집에 들어와서 내일을 위해 또 충전하고 또 생각하고 또 치유받는 곳이기도 하니까요. 그렇지만 또 어떤 면에서는 집이라는 아주 내밀한 공간은 그 구성원이 아니면은 알아볼 수 없는 그런 곳이 아주 내밀하게 그 작품 속에서 많이 보여졌던 것 같은데, 두 번째 섹션에서는 조금 더 거시적인 관점을 보여줬다고 생각합니다. 두 번째 섹션은 이 UAE라는 사회가 어떻게 초반에 형성되었고 또 발전되는 역사 속에서 그 지도라는 것, 그 지도가 또 얼마나 정치적이고 또 권력주의적으로 만들어졌는지, 또 그것에 의해서 사람들이 영향을 받아서 또 살아가는지, 그리고 또 그것 자체가 사람에 의해서 만들어지는 것이기도 하니까요. 아주 이런 그 역설적인 그 지도의 관계 속에서 우리가 이 사회를 이해하고 또 이 사회 속에서 살아가는 사람들의 정체성을 이해할 수 있었다고 생각합니다. 특히나 제가 준비하면서 계속해서 느꼈던 것이 이 UAE의 사회 발전 속도나 어떤 모양새가 우리나라와 굉장히 많은 지점이 비슷하다고 생각했기 때문에 이 두 번째 섹션에서는 한국 사람들이 특히나 더 공감할 수 있는 부분이 많지 않았나라는 생각이 들었습니다. 왜냐하면 두 번째 섹션에서 첫 번째 그 말하자면 현대미술 시인의 첫 번째 세대라고 할 수 있는 그 모하메드 카짐과 크리스티아나 데마키가 같이 협업을 해서 저희와 마야와 함께 그 큐레이팅을 했는데, 그 과정 속에서 이 그 두 작가가 이 사회가, 그 UAE 사회가 처음부터 어떻게 건국이 되었고 또 그 압축 성장의 과정이 어떠했는지를 저는 간접적으로 많이 배울 수 있었습니다. 그러한 지점이 이 두 번째 섹션에 많이 반영되고 있는데, 특히나 제가 어떤 작품을 하나 설명드리고 싶은데 어떤 게 좋을까요? 아주 제가 사랑하는 작품이 사실 두 번째 섹션이 굉장히 많습니다. 그 중에서 가장 대표적인 작품이 아마도 이제 모하메드 카젬의 작품일 텐데, 아마 전시장에서 보셨을 텐데 그 파도가 이렇게 그 쓸려가면서 그 위도와 경도의 표시를 이렇게 쓸려가는 그런 작품이 있었습니다. 근데 저는 그 작품을 매번 한국 관객들에게 이제 설명으로 소개할 때마다 관객들이 그냥 단박에 그 작품에 대해서 그냥 느끼시더라고요. 어떤 이야기를 하려고 하는지. 그 이야기를 하기 전에 이 모하메드 카젬이라는 작가와 그 크리스티아나 데마키라는 작가가 이 사회 속에서 어떠한 사회 경험을 했는지, 그리고 그 건국의 역사와 발전의 역사를 다 목도하는 그 두 작가의 정체성이 이러한 작품을 만들어낼 수밖에 없다라는 것을 그 이야기 흐름 속에서 그냥 작품 자체를 이해하시더라고요. 그러한 것을 미루어 봤을 때 이 작가들이 보여주고 있는 여러 가지 사회적인 그 이슈라던가, 그리고 그 사회적인 이슈가 발현되면서 자기의 정체성이 또 어떻게 변경되고 또 새롭게 구축되었는가라는 것을 잘 드러내지 않았나, 그런 생각이 드는 섹션이었습니다.
Thank you.
Can I add
Yes,
something?
please, yes.
Actually, I think the title of this section is very important, Recording Distance and not Topography. And Christiana Demarchi and Mohammed Kazem, I mean, there is the idea of recording distance. So it means it's almost like presenting cartography as a counter-mapping practice. So foregrounding relationships over borders, foregrounding movement over exclusion, and obviously then foregrounding the idea of migration, of displacement, of movement. And the porosity of borders. So the work in that section addresses, and the work that you referenced for Mohammed Kazem, these waves, there's also a sense of hope, because it is a work, I don't know if you've seen it. It is a work that has coordinates on the sand. It's a coordinates of a place in Sharjah, which is one of the Emirates, one of the 7 Emirates of the United Arab Emirates. And there's a wave that's almost you are expecting that eventually it's going to erase these coordinates. But there's also optimism there, because it is again a movement. It's that where are these coordinates being taken? Where are these waves that actually connects us? You know, that where are they going? And so in a lot of these works, there's a lot of, in a way, there is an understanding of the different realities we are living today, but there's also a silver line of hope. And I think that silver line is also something that we want to believe in, what Nam June Paik preempted, that we will become much more connected. And it's a conversation we had, Anna, that you were saying that yes, we're expecting technology to bring us closer. Yes, maybe we know more instantaneously more about each other, but have we failed in being more connected?
Yeah, I think it's a debate that we can have for a long time, because we don't know. Again, it's a complexity that we don't need to resolve. But it's interesting you chose to mention that the water connects us, or the sea. This is, I know, part of the concept behind this artwork. I know Mohammed Kazem personally, and he's told me many times about that. And you mentioned, Eunju, that you didn't need to explain it necessarily to Korean audiences, because there's a sense of connection within the artwork. No, it is not necessarily based on a history or a physical place in the world. Are we, the dichotomy between being connected by technology and maybe losing parts of ourselves is something that's come up again and again in our conversations and in my reflections of both the exhibitions through the catalogues as well. I wonder if I just then was having a conversation. I wonder if maybe, Eunju, what do you think about this idea of, when we connect, it's part of our human nature. We need to connect. It's interesting that these works bring us together. But do we think that there are elements also of losing ourselves in this globalized world that we live in? What do you think about that?
제가 속단해서 말하기 참 어려운 그런 질문을 던져주셨습니다. 그렇지만 이 근접한 세계라는 이 근접성에 대해서 이야기하는 이 전시를 준비하면서 가장 제가 말하자면 좀 조심하려고 했었던 게 저와 마야 둘 다 그랬는데, 사실 근접하다고 해서 동일하지 않다. 우리가 동일하지 않은 것 속에서, 그리고 어차피 둘이 만나는 문화 자체가 굉장히 다르고, 언어도 다르고 뭐 종교도 다르고 해서 굉장히 다른 문화 속에서 근접함을 찾고자 억지로 이제 뭔가 공통된 거나 근접한 거나 뭐 비슷한 거나 이런 걸 찾아가는 과정이 아니라 그저 그냥 이렇게 교차하는 이 상황 속에서 그냥 좀 비슷하네라고 마주칠 수 있는 부분, 혹은 그런 교차하는 상황 속에서 역시 이거는 좀 다르네라는 그런 지점을 발견하는 것 자체가 굉장히 좀 중요하다라고 생각이 들었고, 이러한 것들이 계속 이렇게 겹쳐지면, 이런 것들이 계속 이제 뭐 아드마프뿐만 아니라 UAE뿐만 아니라 다른 이제 국제성을 가진 다른 기관과 계속해서 이러한 교차하는 서사를 만들어 나감으로써 우리가 국제성을 조금 더 획득할 수 있지 않나, 그런 생각이 듭니다. 그렇지만 국제성에 대해서 이야기하는 거는 너무 쉽지 않은 그런 주제가 아닌가 생각됩니다.
Thank you. Sorry, we're just waiting for the translation to come through. That's why we're slightly delayed. I know that was a kind of big question, Eunju, that I threw at you, but I think it's something that we can continue to discuss. We must also keep our promise to the audience that we were going to walk them through the exhibition. So we do need to also talk about the third section, which is perhaps, one of the most full sections of the exhibition, and therefore maybe a good segue from talking about these complex ideas to move to the third section. So Maya, maybe you could talk audiences through the curation behind the third section.
Yes, and I think already Eunju addressed it a bit. So the third section is curated by 3 artists who work together as a trio. It's Ramin Harizadeh, Rokni Harizadeh, and Hissam Rahmanian. And their approach, actually it was such an interesting approach to the exhibition, is that idea of the amphibian, is this idea of artists who works between 2 environments, between their artistic practice and between being part of governmental institutions and their work within these institutions. And what they concentrated on are artists that their practice really flourishes after the 50th anniversary of the UAE, which is, I mean, the UAE was formed in 1971, so that was around 2021, 50. And so it's, so they're quite young artists, but the question that they pose is that not a sense of judgment of what is art and what is defined as art, but more on when is art, and the idea of really bringing in the fact that actually these artists are not passive participant in the, let's say, in the official governmental, in the structural identity of the nation or the nature of the nation, but they're actually active participant and they are shaping that identity. So these are practices that are what they call amphibian. But there's another element of their approach, which was they talk about the contained and the container, and there is, I guess, a Chinese, Korean that you can expand on later on. But so talking about the nature of the nation, they address the elemental, the geological, and starting really from the depth of a work that also addresses oil and energy and movement and containment, to the context of how the nation is narrated. And that becomes an outer circle of maybe contained or container. There is always that porosity of the membrane that they talk, where all the transformation is taking place on these liminal spaces, in these borders, these moments of intersection.
I mean, it's an incredibly complex, to use that word again, section full of discoveries. And actually, Eunju, it would be helpful if you could explain the Chinese symbol, I think it's Chinese, of the kind of house within a house, I think.
저도 한자는 잘 모르는데요. 그 많은 분들이 그냥 보시긴 하셨을 겁니다. 입구자가 이렇게 조그맣게 있고 그 위에 요 크게 한 번 더 있는 그 자가 회라고 합니다. 그래서 요 글자의 뜻에서 아이디어를 받았다기보다는 글자가 가지고 있는 그 네모가 겹쳐진 그 형태에서 아이디어를 차용해서 내부 공간과 외부 공간을 조금 구분지었다고 할 수 있는데, 전시장에 가시면은 이 RRH 스튜디오 그 트리오 작가들이 이제 바닥에 이제 밟으셔서 감상하실 수 있는 그림을 만들어놨는데, 그것이 말하자면 그들의 어떤 내부 공간이라고 할 수 있을 것 같습니다. 그리고 그 내부 공간을 둘러싼 외부 공간에 이제 그들이 초대한 다양한 작가들의 어떤 그 예술 활동을 보실 수 있고요. 그러한 그 다양한 작가들의 활동이 말하자면 이중적인 그 양서류적인 그 예술가들의 활동이라고 할 수 있습니다. 하나는 예술가로서 작품을 만들어내는 것, 그리고 하나는 예술가지만 제도권과 함께 뭔가를 만들어내는 것이라고 할 수 있는데, 그 작가들이 가질 수밖에 없는, 그리고 그 UAE 작가들이 가지는 어떤 예술적인 생태계가 그 RRH 트리오가 어떤 주변 환경으로서 가지고 가는 생태계가 아닐까라는 생각이 듭니다.
I just want to reinforce one point, that for the 3 artists, everything is contained and everything is container. So, if I want to take an example, for instance, one of the artists who, because what they presented is they presented works by artists that were developed and created within the structure the official governmental institutions, like, for instance, works that were used for gifting in diplomatic situations, or works that were developed to celebrate the 50th anniversary or the 51st anniversary. And in parallel, they show also works that were developed within a studio practice. For instance, if I take the example of it's not Sheikh Al-Kidbi, help me there. Is it Aisha Al-Kidbi? It's Rawda Al-Kidbi. Yes. If I take the example of Rawda Al-Kidbi, I'm going to talk about two works. One of them is, and describe the work. One of them is actually a traditional rug with the traditional, I mean, there is a whole region that's very immersed in that tradition of weaving, of carpet weaving. And that is overlaid with cement. And the cement is broken with calligraphy. And the calligraphy is taken by a poet, by an Emirati poet, but that talks about welcoming. And it's like a verse that talks about, I don't know how many, but like 1,000 welcome, but I think it's another number, but it's like, it's that sense of hospitality, of gifting. But also, there is a reversal that's taking place here, because first of all, the cement, it's the material for construction, right? It's the material that built in a way the UAE, and it's overlaying a tradition, right? It's overlaying this rug that in a way represents tradition. But then this is visible through the calligraphy, because it's that play on visibility, invisibility, that tradition and the progress, past and future. So, and it's holding on to all in a way that it's really bringing a sense of maybe equilibrium, but different equilibrium points perceived by different artists in a different way. And so and again, normally a rug is on the floor, it's hanging on a wall. So again, there's an element of gravity here that has changed. That's a work that was used to gift by the government for important, for important visits. Her other work that is really facing she uses the tessellation that is used in the traditional dress in the Emirates. And at the end of it, as the story goes, that usually when travelers move through the desert from a travel, they dip it in the scent, and scent is extremely important in that part of the world. So they dip it to remind them of home. But this structure suddenly is almost like a sculptured structure that feels like a rigid flying carpet. I don't know, but it's like, but it's a sculptural piece, and there is a certain rigidity in that, and in a way, it's a rigidity that goes against what the desert commands, which is constant movement. Because if you stop in the desert, you die. You need to move. You need to keep going on forward. And I think there's such a poetry between her two works, and between her reflect, and this is why I understand the Harizadis when they're presenting these, and Rahmanian, when they presented these work and these artists, they're presenting it they're not reducing the complexity. They're not explaining. They're presenting it to the audience to read through them and to transform, for the work to transform and for the audience to transform their understanding.
And it totally depends on who you are. Again, to come back to this notion of self, on how you respond to that. I can see Eunju furiously making notes when Maya was talking, and I am actually interested just to revisit that section one more time, because you talked about the Korean, particularly the older gentlemen who had a response to these works, which talk about working within the system. Not to repeat, just to maybe reflect on what Maya has talked about, and the curation of this section, about how it can. For me, it's really fascinating. This short period of time, the last 5 years, which is resonating with audiences in Korea who are maybe in their 70s and 80s, but how it can sort of transcend time and also give us different inroads to what we're talking about.
시대를 건너뛴다는 것은 사실 어쨌든 단일한 사회가 아니라 다른 사회를 다른 사회의 구성원을 바라보는 거기 때문에 너무나 자연스럽게 일어나는 일인 것 같습니다. 우리나라는 비슷한 일을 7, 80년에 겪었을 뿐이고 그러한 그 경험을 가지고 있는 세대가 중장년이라면 현재 UAE는 현재 그 상황을 겪어내고 있고 그 현재의 상황을 아주 다이나믹하게 살아가는 젊은 작가들이 발맞춰서 이제 뭔가 활동을 보여주는 거라고 생각이 듭니다. 하지만 이러한 이제 UAE의 작가들의 활동을 이제 보면서 저희 나라의 미술계를 반추할 수 있었습니다. 과연 우리나라는 젊은 작가들에게 얼마나 국가로서 혹은 제도권 안에서 많은 기회를 주는가, 그리고 우리나라 젊은 작가들의 생태계는 또 어떠한가, 그런 이제 궁금증이 한국 큐레이터로서 많이 들더라고요. 그래서 한국 작가들은 어떤 예술가로서 그리고 또 이 생계를 이어나가는 하나의 그 단일한 존재로서 어떠한 그 삶의 형태를 가지고 가고 있는가, 그런 거를 생각해봤을 때 참 이제 안타깝게도 우리나라도 역시나 이제 그 제도권 안에서 이 작가 활동을 할 수밖에 없는 여러 가지 그 생태계가 생각나고 또 기금에 의존해서 살아갈 수밖에 없는 그런 여러 가지 작가들의 그 고민들과 고충들 이런 것들이 생각나게 돼서 아마도 많은 젊은 작가들 그리고 작품 활동을 하고 있는 많은 작가들이 이 세 번째 섹션의 그러한 스토리를 알고 보신다면 이 나라의 그 생태계, 예술 생태계가 조금 더 궁금한 지점이 있었지 않았나 그런 생각이 듭니다.
I love that this is opening up new possibilities, perhaps. I mean, maybe that's too much of an assumption, but again, that's the point of this cross collaboration, this whole initiative between the two institutions of Seoul Museum of Art and Abu Dhabi Music and Art Foundation was about this. It wasn't just about bringing art to Abu Dhabi and bringing art to Seoul, and it is about creating conversations, bringing in new perspectives, allowing the artworks to also have a new perspective, as we talked about at the beginning of the discussion. You both actually picked on highlighted certain artworks within this exhibition, and I will ask you if there are any that you would like to mention from the one in Abu Dhabi. Obviously, I will also be asking you in the audience if there are any questions coming up, so have a think about any questions that you might want to ask for the curators. But before I do any of that, we need to finish the exhibition walkthrough with a beautiful word, epilogue. The word epilogue isn't often used for exhibitions. It's more often a literary term. And I find it's a really appropriate way to, as we start to close this talk, to talk about the choice of using the word epilogue and also the choice to put this really beautiful video work by Ayman Zaidani as an epilogue. Maya, maybe you can talk about the decision to bring that as an epilogue to this exhibition.
Yes, I mean, that was a decision that Eunju and I took after we really revisited the exhibition. Again, it's in a similar manner we decided to start from the domestic, from the home with Farah Al-Qasimi. We decided that the way that Ramin Rokni and Hissam opened up the exhibition, and there was a richness, and to go through their section that could be overwhelming for an audience that is not familiar with the artist, not familiar with the work, not familiar with the context. We felt that there need to be that epilogue. And actually, the work of Ayman Zaidani, who's an artist from Saudi Arabia, but that work is a work that he developed in the UAE, working in a research center, which is the International Center for Biosaline Agriculture in Dubai. And it is a work that was commissioned for the exhibition that we had, that ADMAF, commissioned by ADMAF in 2022. And that work is, the protagonist of that work is a desert parasitic plant called the Sinomorium. And in a way, it brings together all the concepts that we've addressed in this exhibition, because it's a parasitic plant that exists only because it moves from other hosts, from host to host. And in that process, keeping almost like holding the genetics of of the desert survives. So it's that idea of survival through transformation, through movement, through transformation, and through being hosted. And also having, in the essence, the elemental history, the elemental genes that predates us. And in a way, that is something that Ramin Rakni and Hissam addressed in their work, Not All You People, the floor piece, which is very elemental, which is very, with also bring that, these energy, this transformation, the depth of being, of our world, and also that process of transformation that is, or turning, that is in Farah Al-Qasimi's section, and that process of crossing, of moving, of interacting, interdependence, that is also in the section of Christiane and Muhammad. So it is, and from an epilogue, I actually finished also my essay in the text with that epilogue, so in the same way. And I don't know whether we can talk a little bit of the structure of these two books very quickly.
Of course, yes.
I will talk about the structure maybe of, layered medium, we are in open circuit. So the series, we titled it Layered Dialogues, because, so both of them, Layered Dialogues 1, Layered Dialogues 2, the first title is Layered Medium, we are in open circuit. The second title is Proximities, the title of the exhibition. But dialogues because we are continuously in an open dialogue. And the first publication is centered around the exhibition, so follows the sections, how you experience the exhibition, with text, with guest writers that commented on the themes, as I said, on the themes that are addressed by the Korean artists in that exhibition. And some of them are quite interesting, like Ahmed Makia, talking about what does it mean, that concept of alien and being from somewhere, belonging, alien and belonging. In a very beautiful way is the way that we also work on our environment, continuously work to change the environment. Are we actually permanent aliens, or do we belong really to somewhere, a place where we're constantly trying to change? So there was all this question that is being posed. Do you want to talk about how the structure of this is done? Because it's a different structure. Actually, you can see it through the different colors. That gives you a clue.
도록 만드는 과정이 굉장히 쉽지 않았습니다. 일단은 첫 번째 도록에 대해서 설명을 해주셨지만 이제 두 번째 도록은 조금 다른 이제 구성을 했는데요. 제가 만들고 나서 생각이 드는 것은 이게 약간 참조가 가능한 사전 같은 느낌입니다. 이게 전시의 맥락을 비주얼적으로 아주 충분히 보여드릴 수 있도록 앞단에는 저희가 반 정도의 분량을 할애해서 전시 전경을 굉장히 충분하게 보여드립니다. 그리고 그 전시 맥락을 조금 더 복잡하게 이제 다단하게 다 설명드리기 위해서 다양한 필자들을 섭외하고 또 마야와 제가 글을 쓰고 그리고 초빙했던 그 아티스트 큐레이터라고 참여했던 작가들이 처음에 이 전시를 어떻게 영감을 받아서 이제 같이 협력을 했는지에 대한 글을 굉장히 이제 아주 다층적인 층위로 보실 수 있는데요. 그 과정 속에 저희가 중간중간에 넣었던 것이 이 각 작품들에 대한 설명을 계속 이제 따라가면서 보실 수 있게 했습니다. 그 방향, 그 방식은 약간 인덱스를 저희가 참조했는데요. 그래서 앞에 전시 전경 사진을 보시면 밑에 조그만 그 넘버가 계속 보입니다. 그래서 그 넘버가 사실상 뒤에 나오는 그 작품 설명에 대한 넘버이거든요. 그래서 전시장 풍경 속에서 내가 어떤 작품에 대한 이제 어떤 흥미가 생기면 그 흥미에 따라서 자꾸 뒤쪽에 그 인덱스를 참조해서 보고 그 인덱스를 읽다가 또 전시 전경 맥락 속에서 이게 작품이 어떻게 해석됐는지가 궁금하면 다시 전시 전경 속으로 가실 수 있게 그 전시 전경의 페이지를 인덱스 옆에 넣었습니다. 그래서 전시 전경 맥락과 그 작가와 작품 개별적인 어떤 맥락이 서로 상응하고 또 참조되고 거기에서부터 어떠한 새로운 이야기가 만들어나갈 수 있는지를 저희는 조금 더 충분히 이제 보여주고자 했습니다.
I hope that you do all decide to dive back into the exhibition after hearing this conversation. I would like to ask you at this point if you do have any questions. I know it's always one of those moments in any kind of talk where nobody wants to put their hand up first, but I promise you we won't bite. Any questions? Okay. I'll maybe give you one more chance. But okay. I do have one burning question that I need to ask you both, although you have kind of already answered it, I have to say. But it's a really basic question, and as curators, I know you deal with lots and lots of artworks in lots of contexts, so it's a bit like asking you which is your favorite child. But do you have an artwork, maybe I'll go to you first, Maya, that really resonates with you across either of the two exhibitions that you've worked on for the past few years now with both the Seoul Museum of Art and Abu Dhabi Music and Art Foundation?
Oh, okay. That's a challenging question. Okay, I mean, for me, it's very difficult to have a comment on Proximities. So I'm not going to choose a work within Proximities. I'm too biased to be able to talk about any work in particular, even though we talked about a few. I'm going actually to go to the first exhibition, Layered Medium Art in Open Circuits. First of all, because I had the privilege and the time to immerse myself and to make several visits before we started working on the exhibition with Kyungwon. To read a lot about the scene. I was helped extensively by the team at SeMA, who provided me with a lot of material to go through, organize studio visits to meet, and also to actually start from a brilliant exhibition that was taking place at SeMA at the end of the world split endlessly. That actually was the basis for us to think about the exhibition, Layered Medium Art in Open Circuits. And one work that actually it's an artist who was not part of that exhibition, but that we invited to take part in Layered Medium. It's Park Hee-seo. I'm sorry if I'm pronouncing the name incorrectly. It's Park Hee-seo's work. UN Tower, it was done in 1997. And it was, I think, presented at the second edition of the Gwangju Biennale. And for me, it's one of those encounters where it resonated so strongly, and it continues to, it's on top of my mind up until today, especially with what we're going through in the world today. So I'm going to describe the work. I don't know whether you're familiar with. So it's basically, what's the material? It's not wood, plywood. Okay, it's a plywood screen that takes the shadow of an inverted UN tower. And apparently it's an unbuilt, it's actually a symbol that you find in extensively, or I don't know whether you still find it or you found it in matchboxes in Korea, that symbol of the UN tower. And it's a not a built monument in Korea, so it's only that symbol. And Park Hee-seo presents it as an inverted tower, but actually it's the absence of it because it's the shadow of the tower. And behind it presents all the material, the remnants of constructing that installation. So in a way, so there are several symbols that I read personally. First of all, the fragility. The structure is extremely fragile. Material that is found material, so it's almost like demonumentalizing a monument. And even in 1997, I feel he's already commenting on the failure of what this symbol represents in terms of, in terms of protection, in terms of freedom, ideas of freedom, ideas of protection, ideas of democracy, ideas of, and today, I think we feel, it's a complete failure of that symbol. And he already turned it down then, and he already contested that. It's almost like it's humorous, but it's black humor. It's disappointment, it's disillusion, And this is personally how I feel today. There is a big disillusionment with all of these ideas of value and and freedom and protection and help and
It was, I think,
illusion of power.
we were lucky enough to have these works in Abu Dhabi, as you know, for Layered Medium. We are in Open Circuits, which is how I started my journey actually into learning about contemporary Korean art, which is hugely fascinating. And that work in particular, I understand why it still resonates, and especially with what's happening today in the world, it's particularly powerful. So thank you. Eunju, I know you mentioned already Mohammed Kazem's work. Perhaps that's the one that you will choose, or perhaps you want to flip the audience that question instead. But could I ask you if there's a particular work that resonates with you?
이번 전시, 그러니까 그 서울에서 벌어진 전시가 아부다비 전시 작품의 이제 2배입니다. 그래서 굉장히 저에겐 더 불리한 지점에 있다고 할 수 있는데, 그 100여 점 중에 이제 한 작품만 그 한 작품만 꼽는다는 게 굉장히 쉽지 않은 일이고, 또 저로서는 한 점 한 점 굉장히 그 수많은 역경과 고난을 거치면서 가지고 왔기 때문에 이제 한 점 한 점 에피소드가 있어서 굉장히 마음속으로 이제 애정을 다 가지고 있는데, 그럼에도 불구하고 이제 누구나 이 작가를 선택했을 때 지탄하지 않을 작가는 뭐 그 하산 샤리프의 작품입니다. 사실 이 하산 샤리프라는 작가는 어쨌든 이 UAE 아트씬의 어떤 그 아버지라고 불리는 분이고, 또 그 작가의 아주 상징적인 작품인 사전이라는 작품이 이제 저희 전시장에 전시가 되어 있는데, 그 작품을 제가 이제 들여다보면서 이 전시의 어떤 그 협업의 의미, 그리고 그 이 전시가 어떤 그 한국적인 미술사와 그 UAE 미술사가 어떠한 지점에서 맞닿겠다, 혹은 또 비슷한 이야기를 할 수 있겠다라는 생각이 들었던 어떤 단초가 되었던 작품이기도 해서 저는 굉장히 좋아하는 작품입니다.
Thank you. I know that was a hard question. I actually want to ask you if anybody would be willing to share an experience that they've had during the exhibition. I always ask people this. I mean, I have to say, I usually ask my children when I take them to an art exhibition, which artwork was your favorite? It's usually which one they remember. But does anyone want to share what their favorite artwork is from this exhibition, or at least one that maybe they took the most pictures of? You forgot? Okay, we can help you to remember if you describe it, or maybe you can show us a picture on your phone.
First of all, thank you so much for sharing your stories. Actually, I haven't seen this exhibition yet, but I feel I'm really lucky to be here and hear your stories. And it really helped me to expand my imagination before visiting the exhibition. So thank you so much, first of all. I'd like to ask if there's another opportunity to do the bilateral collaboration in the future, what aspect or perspective you would like to focus on?
저희 미술관은 국제교류팀이 있습니다. 그래서 국제교류팀의 사업 방향에 맞춰서 현재 이제 북미 지역 쪽으로 그 새로운 교류 기관을 발굴하려고 노력하고 있고요. 그쪽으로 새로운 사업도 발굴해서 점차적인 그 어떤 국제교류의 권역을 넓혀가려고 하고 있습니다. 그래서 현재 그 북유럽 쪽으로 컨택하고 있는 여러 가지 그 기관과 이런 그 계획이 있고, 또 앞으로 권역을 그동안 아시아, 그 중동, 그리고 동유럽, 북유럽 이렇게 쭉 연속성 있게 이제 권역을 확장하려고 노력해 왔는데, 앞으로 조금 더 권역을 세부적으로 이제 확장시키면서 조금 더 국제적인 저변을 넓히려고 하고 있습니다.
Okay, I'm having a completely different answer. We are actively pursuing to continue this collaboration. And we are actually still working together on another project. But to answer directly your question, I think it's phenomenal to expand. Proximities is a very elastic concept, and I'm glad to hear that this concept of proximity, of reaching out and building relationship, expands beyond. Obviously, it started also before that, but beyond that, Abu Dhabi Seoul relationship, or UAE and Korea. But you know, once we have, as we say, that when we meet each other, we transform and we change. And in this meeting that took place, I think we changed to the better from our perspective, and it is a feeling that we don't want to lose. So we'll keep on pursuing it.
Thank you so much. I will. Did you find the artwork that you were talking about? Yes? Do you want to? Okay, please share with us.
One of the most interesting art that I've seen is, I don't know the English name, but the Korean name is Pandanboryu. It's like this Arabic letter, cup moving like left and right, like takfir and tafkir. So,
can you tell us why you found that was so interesting?
because I've learned Arabic like about 2 years, and Arabic has like 3 roots, and the three alphabets have meaning. So it shows the beautifulness of Arabic language.
Thank you so much for sharing that. I really, really appreciate that. And hopefully you will all have similar experiences and find artworks that you resonate with as you explore the exhibition. You have a few more days. I think we are on the 27th today. You have until the 29th to explore the exhibition. So thank you so much to Maya and to Eunju for their time on the panel today. And I hope that you really enjoy talking about these 2 publications, which are published by Skira. And if you are interested in purchasing the publication, please do reach out to the team here. We also have some copies that you can have a look at right now if you're interested. And thank you to the Seoul Museum of Art for hosting us, of course, and to Abu Dhabi Music and Art Foundation for this wonderful bilateral partnership. And I would also like to thank Shinyoung Securities, who are our publication sponsors. And of course, last but not least, all of you, I'd like to thank you very much for coming and sharing your time with us this afternoon. And please join me in a round of applause for all of us.